Hi everybody, my name is Jason Zimmerman. I'm reading on behalf of John Bond. His IDOC number is 88934. This was written November 11th, 2021. It's titled Some Advice. I can only speak from my own experience when I tell you what life is like in prison. Life for me was very quickly and very dramatically changed when I was sentenced to 25 years in the Idaho State Penitentiary. I did what I think many of us inmates do upon hearing their sentences handed out. I ran through the gambit of emotional responses and picked one to latch onto: anger, frustration, fear, shame, sadness. Sometime later, maybe a year or two, I looked around as if waking from a dream and realized that I could see all these emotions, one or another, mirrored in my fellow inmates. Like devils on their backs, they wore these feelings so long that it became permanent in me. I realized then and there that I had a choice to make. I could pick one of these feelings and let it define me for the rest of my life. I could be a victim, I could rage against the system, or I could do none of these things. I could instead choose to take my life into my own hands, refusing to let this experience get the better of me. It was Sir Walter Raleigh who said, "The world is but a large prison, out of which some are led daily to execution. Whether we are incarcerated or we are imprisoned by our fears, prejudices, greed, or addictions, we as humans all must at some point make the same decision." So after spending 15 years in prison, my advice for someone just getting here is look around you. What do you see? There are plenty angry gangbangers trying to prove themselves, schoolyard bullies who pick on weaker men because they are too afraid to fight people their own size, and men who have grown so bitter with shame that they become a walking resentment for others who don't share their loathing. And then, of course, there's those who have small sentences and simply brush it off like it's a joke. Like it doesn't even bother them until when they come back for the 5th time 20 years later. Do you want to be one of those people? If you do, it's easy. I just described 90% of the population. You can be any one of these people, or you can decide that you are none of them. Maybe that makes you different. Maybe that gets you fewer friends and a few enemies to boot. Maybe that changes your life. Life in prison isn't the movies. You don't have to carry a shank to the shower. Not everyone is out to get you or get one over on you. But it's not Club Med either. We are given rules to live by, and quick consequences follow those who don't toe the line. We are, however, given one thing that many people desire more and more as the world becomes a chaotic mess of modern efficiency: time. We are given the time to change, the time to make ourselves better, to build our bodies, strengthen our minds, and search our spirits for meaning. I've heard it said that a day in prison can be longer than 1,000 years. If that's true, I choose to live 1,000 years of peace rather than suffering. Peace both with the men around me, peace within my own mind. I end with another quote. This from an Italian poet named Burdett. He said, we wandered, but in the end, there is a certain peace in being what one is, and being that completely that a condemned man has that joy. A condemned man has that joy. Thank you.
Started my career in corrections 21 years ago. I've been home now for 6 years, and I can remember one of the first invites that I got back to the institution. One of the wardens asked me, "What's the one takeaway? What's the one thing that you got out of your time here?" Without hesitation, I answered, perspective. That my perspective on all of life had changed. So today I'm speaking on behalf of David Steece, number 61476. David wrote a piece called Perspective. If you were to stand on a chair right now, in whatever room you're at in this moment, that room would suddenly feel strange and unfamiliar to you. You might have spent countless hours in that room and know every nook and cranny, until suddenly, with one step, you become a stranger to it. I hadn't realized just how much my own perspective had changed until I watched for myself as a guy got jumped in the day room. I had seen lots of men get jumped in lots of day rooms, but for some reason this was different. I was in close custody, alone on my walk, because my gang was at war with another gang, and the tier was filled with rival gang members. I was in a cell on the upper tier, watching from my window as it unfolded below me. I saw what was happening before this guy even noticed that his own gang was slowly working themselves into position. surrounding him on three sides. I saw the look of fear and panic in his face as he realized too late what was happening. He had just enough time to take 2 steps backwards, putting his back against the wall, and for reasons I'll never understand, he lifted his head and made full eye contact with me just before they made their move. It was as if, in a final act of desperation, he was begging me, a stranger, a rival gang member, and his enemy, for help from 30 feet and a steel door away. I held my breath as they went to work on it. The familiar sounds of shoes squeaking on cement floors and faint wet moans filled the air. By the time it was over, it looked like someone had splashed a bucket of red paint on the walls. This was my moment of perspective. I stood on this moment and I looked down at that room, the room that I had built my life around, and it felt strange and unfamiliar. I had been in that same cell for over a year and had spent countless hours looking out and over the railings down into a day room filled with the same people doing the same things, living out their Groundhog Day existence over and over again. But now, as if by magic, it felt as though I was seeing it for the first time. I had seen countless acts of violence, some even worse than this one, but somehow this was different. It was different because I was different. It was different because I was seeing it from a new perspective. It was different because I had started to feel the world around me. I wasn't just watching a man being attacked, I saw beyond it. I saw the pain and the betrayal. I saw the fear and the helplessness. I looked even deeper and I heard the cries of his family. I felt the shame of his fall from grace, and I felt the secret pain of those who were told to break the body of their friend. I stood there as if looking down upon the senseless, insignificant workings of a world the size of a postage stamp. I felt as if I had stepped up onto a chair in a familiar room, and for the first time I was able to see the tops of the furniture, all the dusty, dirty places that were never meant to be seen. And when I stepped down, I was never able to see the world the same again. I saw that guy a few months later. We were separated by glass and a foyer between units, but I waved him over to the window. And using the prison version of sign language, I spelled out, "I'm sorry about that." He shrugged and walked away. Unsure why I would be apologizing. I wasn't even sure myself. I went back to my workout, and a few minutes later, he waved me back to the window and spelled out, "It's all good."
I'm Danielle Kroeger. I also go by Danny. I'm speaking on behalf of Jason Burdett, IDOC number 56361. This is my first day. One at a time, my fingers pressed into the black ink pad, then rolled across the fingerprint card from left to right. As I wiped my hands with a paper towel, the deputy advised me to be mindful of the men in jail. Predators don't care how young you are. Now grab your bedroll and follow me. Sounds from the TVs echoed through the bars and off the walls of the booking area. Obediently, I followed the slender, middle-aged blonde woman towards the far sidewalk, where men's voices could be heard intermixing with the commercial as we approached the entrance. The deputies pulled a ring of heavy metal keys from a clasp attached to her utility belt and opened a steel control panel. She pushed a button, and as the tier bars rattled open along the old dusty track, she pointed and said, "Your cell is all the way down to the far hall. You're in a single." With my sheets and wool blankets hugged tightly to my chest, I shuffled through the narrow entrance, past a painted red security line on the floor, and into the common area of the block. A few men dressed in faded orange scrub pants and bright orange colored t-shirts sat leaned against the wall on an overturned plastic 5-gallon bucket. The opening bars distracted their attention away from an old analog TV that was mounted above their heads. I was no stranger to being locked up. I had spent 5 of my previous 7 years of my life in and out of various juvenile facilities. The jail was different. It was dingy, stuffy, it was run down. The men lounging there looked old and tired, weathered by failure and regret. Their eyes weren't curious like those of youngsters, but instead followed me with suspicious squint of a graveyard ship convenience store clerk. I kept my head down as I weaved my way through the narrow area and turned left the way I'd been directed. I found the cell I was assigned and threw my bedding onto the lumpy, hard, pale green plastic mattress on top of the bunk. The space was dirty, but nothing a couple of rags and some soap couldn't remedy. I had noticed a fella sitting next to a phone in an area to my left. As I passed through the barrier corridor, on the way to my cell, I left my bedding piled up, turned back, and walked to the small common area that had its own TV. There was a shower and a payphone. The same guy I passed moments before was still sitting on the metal table next to the phone, rolling a cigarette out of a yellow foil pouch. Once he finished twisting the thin paper, he extended his hand and introduced himself. "Hey man, people call me Dopey." I shook his hand and introduced myself while eyeing his cigarette. "You need a pouch?" Dopey asked, nodding in the direction of his open tobacco. I gratefully accepted his offer and bound with him as I learned how to roll my first cigarette by hand. Dopey's name was Troy, and he was only a couple years older than I. The jail wasn't anything like the movies and what that woman in booking had put me ready for. The worst part about the place is that it was painfully dull and boring. Men woke up each day to sit in front of a TV, chain smoke, drink coffee, and tell tired old war stories, just waiting.
I'm Kaitlin Fledderjohann, and I'm speaking on behalf of Travis Tanner. His IDOC number is 121842, and his story is called She Is On My Mind. Ora High School, the late 80s, beginning of my senior year, I am the last class of the 8 regular 4 to 8 school day. Coach Pankratz is lecturing me about the importance of proper exercise and diet of a healthy life. I chuckle because I was watching him slam junk food and caffeine for the last 30 minutes. But who am I to judge? I've been living on cold pizza and lukewarm Diet Coke for the last 3 days. I yawn. I'm stressed. I'm half falling asleep and preparing for what's to come once class was over. The bell rings. It's go time. There's no socializing I needed to do now. I just stop at my locker and take a 2-hour bike ride to Boise High School for 4 more hours of education, night school. I open the locker and pull out a neatly folded piece of paper stuck on the vent. On the inside, in perfect penmanship, reads the warning, "Do not read until after night school." A mixed feelings of joy and fear washes over me, energizing all my senses. Earlier that morning, on a simple piece of paper, without having much wisdom of the details of going steady, I let her know my true feelings. Opening my blue canvas messenger bag, I carefully place the note safely in my book I'm reading, The Pearl by John Steinbeck. Then I pass the hall and past Principal Stanley, who's trying to clear out the school, with all the youth in full opposition. It's more like attempting to herd cats. I step outside and get my bike. It's 4 p.m. The next 2 hours will be all mine. Across from Bora, my older brother Darian is laying bricks for the new extension of the cemetery. He calls me over and hands me $5 and adds in caution to ride safely. Frowning and looking at my feet, he warns me to stop taking his shoes. This time they were his new red Converse All-Stars he'd just gotten from Copples, Brownsville. I completely forgot I even had them on. I say goodbye and push play on my yellow Sunny Sportsman Walkman. U2's Joshua Tree fills my ears. I'm now free to think. She and her note come directly from the forefront of my consciousness. I ride past Curtis East on Cassia, round the bend on J105 radio station. Over my own music, I can faintly hear Robert Plant growling out lyrics to some Led Zeppelin song. I can even see the DJ in his car window rocking out. Outrunning cars, dogs, and time, pushing harder and pumping for every ounce of energy, swerving and dodging bumpers and side mirrors, paying zero regard to lights and traffic signs. I work my way through residential neighborhoods and backstreet alleys. Coming out of my autopilot trance, I find myself passing through Morrisville Cemetery, where a cool wind chills me from the shade of the gargantua trees. I love this part of the ride. There's so much peace. A gentle wind fills the branches. I take my headphones off and listen to it all like a symphony. I exit in front of Rayleigh Mortuary, I know how to read, and see old Mr. Grant standing out front, directing cars for my viewing while crying family welcomes mourners at the door. My love for her has been going on since the first time I saw her in Burgerville in 7th grade, next to South Junior High. She had a joy-filled face, a perfect, intoxicating red-lipped smile, bright, light-filled, electric blue eyes, and golden blonde, naturally curly hair, most always tied back with a pure white handkerchief. I come to the top of Americana, where Joe Albertson's benchtop mansion looks out that valley to face off with Jarrison Plott's hilltop castle and flagpole, and what an adventurous attitude. She was always up for a quest, no matter how nuts it sounded. She was in every way beautiful to me, and her reply was to the note, "This new anxiety is my fuel." She is intertwined in my thoughts. Relaxing for a moment, I let gravity take over and pass in Morrison Park, over the bridge. Some days I take 27th and stop at Jerry's Market in the Catholic school, where Mr. Bermosolo sat at her desk. But today I head straight past Kmart to Gallon's Blanks Alignment Shop and slow briefly to admire an old Porsche sitting out front. I hear Mr. Blank's familiar greetings and I smile and wave in reply. Passing 16th in front, I stopped and flashed back to Dad's old tire shop. Boise Tire and Wheel was no more. Dad was no more. He left. And for that moment, I miss him. Across the street is the old antique store at Nifty 90s. Mr. Larson is in the window hanging something, and Mr. Larson is outside unloading an old stove. I've known Joyce and Dick Larson since the mid-70s. Passing the firehouse, the old cafe, and the old Motherlode restaurant, I pass in front of the Channel 2 TV station and recall when it was Buttery Osco. To my left is the Cabana Motel and its iconic neon sign. To my right is the Crazy Horse. My eldest brother Jeff cautioned me to stay clear of that place. I never questioned him. Keeping north on 16th, I keep looking straight to the west towards 17th and Bannock, to the Havana Synagogue. I know it's there. I flash back to a few years earlier when the Jewish temple was terrorized by a bombing. It was an event that only brought the Boise family together. Crossing state, I see Jimmy drive on the sidewalk, strutting his stuff, waving at all the passing cars. Past Joe Albertson's for a store, I make it to Harrison, single lanes with a single island. Lamppost after lamppost. Darren gave me his bike a few weeks earlier for my birthday, a mid-80s neon yellow specialized rock humper comp. It's instantly become my most prized possession. It became my freedom. At Hill Roll, I smelled the inviting grill of the Hawkins Pack-Out and turned west to visit my older brother, Corey, who's working at the co-op. At the checkout line, Willie Baldwin sees me and points to my back. I find Corey stocking produce. He offers me an exotic Asian fruit and a fresh cassette tape he got the night before from Johnny's at the Record Exchange. I don't know who the church is, but this Starfish album is something I instantly like. Corey has excellent taste in music. I leave and cut my way east to Camelback Park and on 13, smash the pedals and feel the crank yank of the chain pull under my gears. My legs twitch, feeling the pavement hum under the city slicker tires. Zero tread, passing through Hyde Park, I yell out to Vince, who's sitting on his bench with his thick glasses and a bottle of wine. The legendary barber boxer yells back a greeting in his bold Basque accent. I recall over the words I wrote this morning. What would she say? How would she react? Now I feel like throwing up with anxiety. I'm wondering now if I've destroyed the greatest friendship I've ever had. Why did I have to push it? Why couldn't I just leave well enough alone? I fly on 8 just in time to get an ice cold drink from Margaret's at Hollywood Market, the Angel at the North End. Passing through the parking lot of the M&W Market on 8th and Fort, I look for Mr. Holland backpacking groceries out for someone, no sign of him. No time to chat today. The shadow of the giant roster is at the top of the cafe grows. My destination is almost in sight, Boise High School. It's almost 6 p.m., night school starts at 10. Distracted by the sun setting through the window, I barely hear the words of the first class. Coach Bell is yelling out orders to kids on the track and he's finishing up his PE class at 8 p.m. One more class to go, Mr. Barrett's English class. I hate English, but this woman knows my mother, so I can't slack. Work all done in record time. I stare at the clock and insert a new cassette tape. 10 o'clock comes, I press play and escape once again. Down State to 8th, I stop at Capitol Building and I swing the hammer under the giant bell just to kick off anyone in earshot. Passing the Egyptian, I slow down for exiting moviegoers and pedal my way into the Grove through the fountains. It's after 10 p.m. now and the city is closing down. I'm constantly adjusting to darkness, headlights, and street lamps. Further down 8th, I pass the marketplace where the only places still open are 8th Street Deli and Cafe Olay. Further south, I can see in the distance Michael Nelson working late as always, unloading equipment in the warehouse of Rocky Mountain AB. I yell out, hey, he stops and waves back with a smile, one of the hardest working and nicest guys I've ever known. Around the back of the library in the log cabin and crossing under Capitol, I get off the greenbelt at the band shell, exactly where I want to be. Beneath a huge steel sculpture by the art museum, I pause, unzip my messenger bag, and remove the note. Nervously, I unfold it and read. You and I have been so much together. I have worn this day to come for a few years now. Don't ever stop being my friend. Be kind to me. Never be cruel. Always be honest, and my heart is yours. I've loved you all along. Now call me. I dim the ambient light, the city light settings at the bottom of the page. I hear her red lipstick seal. With every element of my entity, I'm burning for her. I race for the nearest payphone I knew of, up Capitol, past BSU Towers, past the Tiger Mart, and the giant red gym sign on Lusk. and straight through Platte Gardens, running onto a train, shivering with anticipation. I drop the corner in and spin the phone style.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I'll take Michael up on his offer just to give a little context of what it means to me to be able to be here today. So I made a really terrible choice when I was 15. And I just passed my 26th year of incarceration. And this morning I woke up behind fences of razor wire. And I never expected that I'd have an opportunity to be in a place and to do a thing and share it like this. So it means an incredible amount to me, and it's, you know, to me, what I hope that you all can take from today is this is what support given or support withheld can mean. And for me to be able to be here today is the proof that things can change and that people can change and the way that we do things can change, because this wouldn't have happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I appreciate everybody who made it possible for me to be here, and I'm just beyond grateful to be able to share today.
Right on.
So I get to share a few of the poems that I've written over the years, and these poems for me have been people helping me to find my voice, to speak for myself, and to share the experiences of other people that are going through things similar to what I've gone through. And for myself, this was just the only way that I could ever deal with some of this stuff. So, but again, I appreciate you being here and letting me share. So, this is called Spirits. Years in the barrel produces fine bourbon, but ancient oak has memory of centuries to impart. Springing through summer, falling into winter, the tickle of fur, feather, and foot across bark skin, sweet valley breezes in its leaves. What can concrete imbue? An infinitely more valuable spirit. When records of oceans turn glaciers, giving way to rivers and streams are erased. The foundation of eons ground to sterile powder. Dead dust choking even the water it is mixed with. A soulless batter designed to harden. This is canned human. Fresh from the field, a bit early actually. Harvested, processed, and canned. 51937 on the shelf I sit. I've picked up a few dents and dings along the way, but 22 years later, I'm holding up pretty well. Previously a victim of frequent rotation, I've been pushed into a cozy corner. 8 years after, I'm content to continue collecting dust. I've aged over the years. What's the shelf life of a can again? Often consider the day I'm finally pulled. Will I still be good? I've wondered. I don't know. I really hope so. I like to think I'm maturing like fine wine. Do they have that in a can? They really should. But worry, I'm more like vinegar. Decades in storage souring. I avoid the truth. The canned goods not opened in time don't mature or even sour. They just go bad.
I have been known as Kroeger 110090. I too am a returning citizen. I did 13 months straight, but I've done a total time of 3 years. The one thing that I want to share today is it was important to me to document my journey through the prison system. I started drinking and using drugs at a very early age. I did not end up in prison until I was 41 years old. So I had a lot of years that I was getting away with things. But the one thing I can say is that when I finally got a chance to stop from all of the chaos and all of the just devastation and destruction that I had caused not only myself and my life, but my family and people that love me. When I had that chance to stop and reflect, I was able to journal things out. And so a couple things that I want to share in my journaling, but before that, I want to tell you about how difficult it is to live with this number. This right here, I grew up as a child who felt like everybody judged me. I felt like people looked at me differently than the way I looked at myself. I always tried to be someone else. I never felt whole inside. I was always incomplete. So when I got out of prison and I had a number, it just added to that. It was difficult to be known, labeled. I may not have been labeled by you, but I was labeled by myself. And the stigma that I had given myself was greater than anything anyone else could have done. For me, having this number meant that I was no longer good enough. I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. Everybody was gonna treat me different and look at me different, and I now needed to hide under a rock. And that was something that I continued. I would love to say when I got out of prison, I had learned my lesson and I stopped using drugs and drinking, but I didn't. I actually continued quite heavily, and I ended up luckily getting into the Ada County Drug Court program. That program has been instrumental in changing my life. And I want to talk about that because it's really important. Addiction runs in a lot of different ways, and that the way drugs and alcohol affect people is different. The way addiction is different in everyone. Treatment is different for everyone. Recovery is different. So what may have worked for the guy next to you doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you or the girl on the other side of you. And so there's no cookie cutter that will take you or your family member that you can put them in and it will fix them. And that's what's really important to know. Addiction for me was something I had no idea that I was going to face when I was a child, but I had to learn through it. And one thing prison did was it gave me an opportunity to reflect on the kind of person I wanted to be, but the label and the judgment that I gave myself prevented me from being that person when I got out. So I ended up getting into the drug court program, and when I got into that program, I wasn't ready to follow the rules. I wasn't ready to change my life. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, follow the rules that I wanted to follow, not all of them. I wanted to do what I could, how I could, and cut corners and not do the things that I was supposed to do. I still wanted to do it my way. What drug court has taught me is that I can't do it my way any longer. I have to be willing to allow others to intervene in my treatment, in my recovery. And I appreciate all of you being here because you are a part of my recovery. Standing up and talking about who I am and where I've come from gives me strength and hope to continue forward in what I do. And if I can at least touch one person, and it's not even about touching anybody, but it's about maybe changing a stigma that people have about people with addiction or people that have been in prison or currently still in prison. It's about maybe changing that stigma because we are all human and there's nothing different between one human being and another human being except for their choices. And that's the difference. And my choices led me to prison and into drug court. I stand here today, 54 days out of graduating drug court. I've been in the program. I've been in the program for 44 months, so it's not been something that has been an easy journey. But the one thing that it's done is it's allowed me to take the time to work on myself. So during my addiction, I lost my children, I lost a marriage, I lost my career, I lost family members, I lost a home, I have felonies. Pretty much anything that could have happened did happen except death. And I was knocking on death's door. I truly was. Ada County Drug Court helped save that. They saved my life. I've been able to rebuild my relationship with my family. They live in Arizona, I'm from Tucson, so that transition out of prison was difficult because I had no family members here. But what drug court did is it allowed people to gather around me. I'm very strong in the 12-step community here in Boise as well. I do give a lot of my credit to the ability that I have been given through 12 steps to change my life and to work with other women. It's really been instrumental in who I am and what I stand for today. The one thing that I appreciate more than anything is the ability to talk about my story. I work in a job that allows me to pick women up from the prison that I left from. So when they come out, I can be the first one that they see, and I can hopefully water a little seed of hope that they may have, that they too can have a different life. So that helps me stay sober and stay out of prison. It really does. And it is something that I have a passion for. I have a new love on life. I have a new passion in life. And I have purpose for the first time in my life.
Right on.
There are a couple things. So this is one of my prison journals. Just kind of wanted to share. This was on my bunk where I was actually at. Lots of different things that women put in journals, men do. But one specific thing I wanted to read to you. So I was a heavy alcoholic from the age of 12. First time I drank, I blacked out. I didn't try crystal meth until I was 40 years old. I was in prison within 1 year of trying crystal meth for the first time. It absolutely stole my soul. And I tell you that from personal experience. But I did write a poem about the drug. I hope it doesn't offend anybody. My hope is that I can share what it's like from a perspective of someone that's lived it, and just give you guys a little perspective into it. Okay, I need water really quick. Sorry, I'm a little hot now.
Take your time.
Okay. If my glamorous lifestyle is appealing to you, and you want to try me because you've got nothing to lose, then let me give you a bit of advice. You are a fool, and you better think twice. I destroy homes, tear families apart. I take your children, and that's just the start. I'm more valued than diamonds, more precious than gold. The sorrow I bring is a sight to be told. If you need me, remember, I'm easily found. I live all around, in schools in the town. I live with the rich, I live with the poor. I live just down the road and possibly even next door. I'm made in a lab, but not the kind that you'd think. I'm even made under your kitchen sink, in your closet, or even in the woods. If this scares you to death, it certainly should. I have many names, but there's one you know best. I'm sure you've heard of me. My name is Crystal Meth. My power is awesome. Try me, you'll see. But once you do, you may never be free. Just try me once, and I might let you go. But if you try me twice, then I might just own your soul. When I possess you, you'll steal and lie. You'll do what you have to do just to get high. The crimes you'll commit for my narcotic charm will be worth the pleasure you feel in your arms. When you see the tears, you must not feel sad. Just forget your morals and how you were raised. I will be your conscience. I will teach you my ways. I'll take kids from their parents, parents from their kids. I will turn you from God. I'll separate friends. I'll take everything you have, even your good looks and pride. I'll be with you always, right here by your side. You'll give up everything, your family, your home, and your stride. Your money and your friends, you'll be all alone. I'll take and I'll take till you've got no more to give. When I'm finished with you, you'll be lucky to live. If you try me, be warned, this is not a game. If given the chance, it'll drive you insane. I'll raid your body, I'll control your mind, I'll own you completely, your soul will be mine. The nightmares I give you when you are lying in bed, the voices you hear from inside your head, the sweats, the shakes, and the visions you see, I want you to know these are all gifts from me. By then it's too late, and you'll know in your heart that you are now mine, and we shall not part. You'll regret that you tried me, they always do. Remember you came to me, not I to you. You knew this would happen, how many times were you told? But you challenged my power, you chose to be bold. You could have said no and then walked away. If you could live that day all over again, what would you say? My power is awesome, as I told you before. I can take your mother and turn her into a whore. Go ahead and curse me with every breath, just make your choice. Will it be life or meth? You will take unknown paths on your journey through life. Some will bring happiness, some will bring strife. But my path is one you must never cross. Although it's well trodden, countless lives will be lost. Now that you've met me, what will you do? Will you try me or not? It's all up to you. I can show you more misery than words can tell. Take my hand and let me lead you straight to hell.
I'm so Kaitlin Fledderjohann, in case you're wondering. And I'm just gonna share my story of what my addiction was like, what my childhood was like. 524 West Waterbury Drive is the first address I ever remembered, but it was never a home. I moved here at the age of 2 with my mother, who up until this point was considered a missing person for about 8 years. My grandparents lived in Meridian, and when my mom called and reached out desperate for help in rehab, they flew us out to be with them. On the outside, we looked like any normal family. We mowed our lawn, we put up Christmas lights. I used to raise my popsicle sticks in the gutters, and I was always home by sundown, just like every other kid. Until one day I started getting grounded all the time. Eventually, we stopped attending holidays with our family. We didn't celebrate birthdays anymore, and we were always staying inside. After a few months, my mom stopped coming home at all. I lived in this house alone from the ages of 6 to 10 years old. By the time anyone knew something was wrong, I had already been molested, locked in a closet for 2 days, duct taped and put in a trunk, and this is just the half of it. The police came with my grandparents, and all I could do was lie. I didn't trust the police. I didn't know who they were. I was told they were bad, and besides, I didn't want to get my mom in trouble. I immediately went into foster care until the courts could figure out where I would go. After about 3 months of bouncing around, I ended up with my grandparents in Kuna. Through the years, my mom would do good for a while. She'd have a slip up, get back on, do good, and then kind of slip again. She ended up on probation for the manufacturing of meth and for felony child abuse, which gave her the opportunity to enroll in treatment. She enrolled in a program called Chrysalis. Things seemed like they were starting to work out, but little did we know things were not at all what they seemed. On Mother's Day of 2005, my mother made headline news for killing a local man in the foothills. Crimes like hers are some of the most grotesque because you never want to believe that your parents are capable of murder. Shortly afterwards, I started to use drugs. I was drinking heavily and smoking weed on the weekends. I ended up on juvenile probation and spent most of my holidays in the juvenile detention center over on Allenball. My cell was G6, and I remember thinking that this was really cool because that summer a song came out and it was called Fly Like a G6. I got off probation and got my first job at Bumpy's in Meridian across the street from the freeway. That's where I met my first addiction. His name was Cody. And for a few months after there, I moved in with him. He gave me a place to stay, and I felt like he really understood me. We started doing harder drugs like meth and heroin. Our relationship got really out of control, and it was extremely toxic. We were constantly breaking up and always fighting. When I would try to leave, I would get burnt with a pipe of hot meth or hit in the face with a frying pan. One day, this ended me up in the ER after running from him, and I ended up getting arrested for a failure to appear. When I was in jail, I was safe, I was sober, and I was fed. I was released a few months later and swore I would never go back. I reconnected with an old friend. She had a lot of money and I had nowhere to go. I craved to be desired and she had the perfect fix. I started sleeping with men for money and went from state to state with this guy named Rico. In 2012, I was arrested for a minor in conception and for a petty theft. After 3 months in jail, I made bail. My bail was made by a 65-year-old man who was told that if he bailed me out, I would have sex with him and his friends for money. He sold me to his friends for the next few years. I overdosed 3 times in my addiction. I was playing with death and I enjoyed it. On October 4, 2014, I was arrested for my first felony. I entered treatment and was given another opportunity at life. I made a lot of choices in my life to get to where I am at now. I wouldn't change my life or any of my choices I made, for it made me stronger and it made me who I am today. Since being sober, I've graduated from college, I've started my own business, and today I have an opportunity to share my trials and tribulations to help other people in similar situations. But most importantly, I've learned what it means to have integrity, and I've learned to love myself, and today I choose to be resilient.
We're crying up here.
I know.
So, I'm still Mark. Still Mark, number 68322. So, again, speaking on behalf of David, number 61476. Yeah. So I want to tell you, David and I started our careers in corrections at the same time. And we both got life sentences. At the same time. And I can remember talking to Dave, and we were like, man, well, I guess we're just going to embrace this thing. We're going to join gangs and make prison our life. Somewhere along the way, we decided that wasn't going to work out. That wasn't going to work out at all for any of us. And we started making different choices. And I was one of the first of us to get the opportunity to come home. And sorry, I'll get it together. Yeah, I won't, I vowed that I wouldn't stop until I died. All my brothers home. So for David, I'm gonna read one more for David. This is fell forward. I'd been in segregation for over a year of power struggles, a violent gang war, and betrayal by everyone that I cared about. It felt as if I was waking from a dream, stuck in one of those fleeting moments between real and unreal, between known and unknown. Nothing in my world made sense to me. Everything that I had built my life around was falling in around me, now that all the hate, the violence, and the paper-thin loyalties had been revealed, haunting me, strangling me with guilt and shame. I felt a deep-seated, uncomfortable urge to be everything that I was not. And if I was going to change, I knew it had to be a complete change, and that hate had to be the first thing to go. But this was easier said than done. A TV in my cell was my only form of companionship, but after deciding to remove hate from my life, even the simple act of watching TV was excruciating. I hadn't realized until I decided to remove hate just how much it had seeped into every part of my life. It used to be that I would watch a show, then wait to catch the credits at the end, and if there were too many Jewish names, I would never watch that show again. Or if I saw a mixed race couple, I would turn the channel instantly. All the while, my head would be filled with an inner dialogue setting me off on racist rants. Now watching TV was a constant struggle because no matter how hard I tried to remove the hate, it found its way in. I would leave it turned off for days at a time out of frustration. Once I became aware of how much hate was involved in my daily life, it was overwhelming. It felt like I was craving thoughts back inside my head so I could rethink them. I would have to stop, rewind, rethink my thoughts until the hate was removed. It was exhausting. It wasn't just TV though. I'd be reading or just wandering along in my thoughts, and suddenly I would realize that I was thinking hateful thoughts. Simply put, I was failing miserably in my attempt to change my life. This went on for months, sitting alone in my cell, wondering if I could ever be free of hate. It was to the point where sleep was impossible. I was being crushed under the weight of guilt for a lifetime of pain that I had inflicted upon the world. I knew that I had to change, but I was struggling to figure how and quickly running out of willpower. All the while, I was still calling shots for my gang. We were at war with a rival gang, and the prison administrators had decided to separate me from my homeboys in an attempt to stop communication and slow down the violence. While doing the laundry in the library, we were still able to get word in and out of segregation. I was sending messages out about how I wanted things to be handled, but I was struggling with the violence. I was letting things go that should have been handled with force, and I could tell by the tone of the notes coming back that my homeboys were starting to question me. I'd been living in segregation for over a year at this point, struggling within myself, alone and away from my homeboys, when one day they moved two of them into the cells next to me. I was excited to finally have some companionship, to have conversation with my people, but I was unsure about what it would mean for the new direction I was trying to take with my life. Besides an hour a day at rec time, which was held outside in cages, we mostly communicated through the vents in our cells. There were 2 vents in each cell, one for air in and one for air out. The air out vents were connected to the cell next door, and the air in the vent and the air in vent was connected to the entire walk or row of cells. So basically, we could make either local or long distance calls, depending on which vent we used. We would spend most of the day standing on the sink in our cells, killed calves, Staying on the sink in our cells, talking to each other in the vents. I kept finding myself up in the vents, chopping it up with the homies, and the next thing I knew, I was saying the same old racist things that I had always said. I would join right in on the conversation, then jump down and cuss myself out for failure. Angry at myself for letting it happen. It seemed like every conversation would eventually turn to something racist. We could be talking about anything, sports, religion, politics, it didn't matter. Within a few minutes, it would turn to outrage over how some black person was trying to take something away from us, and I would find myself joining right in. Between my own head, my TV, and my homeboys, it seemed like no matter how hard I tried to cut hate out of my life, I was doomed to fail. I started to wonder if it was even possible for a man to change everything he was, everything he's ever been. All I knew for sure was that I could not go on as the man that I was. Something had to go, and hate was the most obvious answer. Have you ever had one of those days that you can still feel after years of distance? A day where even looking back at it makes you feel as if anything is possible? I was having just that kind of a day. A kind of day that seemed to wrap itself around you and give you strength. I can still feel it even though it's been about 10 years now. The sun was bright and clean, pushing its way into my cell. It was one of those rare moments in segregation where things felt fresh and new. It had been a long and lonely winter, so when the spring sunshine started to make its way into my gloomy world, it felt more like warm, golden possibility, spilling out onto the floor than it did sunshine. I stepped into the middle of my cell, feeling the warmth of it on the bottoms of my feet as I stood there soaking it in, feeling energized with hope as I told myself that today was going to be the day. I told myself that the next time I was in a conversation of hate with my homeboys, I was going to speak up. I knew they would never understand. It didn't make sense in my own mind half the time, so I knew it would sound insane to them, but I was determined. It didn't take long and I had my chance. I was up in the vents the next day when the conversation turned to something racist, and I said, check it out. I gotta tell you guys something. I'm not racist anymore. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to hear that shit anymore. There was silence, long and empty. The kind of silence that says more than words could ever say. And it was within this silence that my world exploded. I jumped down and I laughed at the absurdity of the situation. But I felt great. I felt proud and brave and alive. Things I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe never. Almost immediately, things began to change. I was able to watch my TV. I found myself rerunning my thoughts less and less, and I felt more confident and clear in my new journey. I started sleeping again. Not long after that, I gave up my position in the gang and I quietly dropped down the ranks into obscurity. I found myself in a weird position of being both shunned and respected. I had struggled with failure, and in that failure I discovered something that I hadn't known was possible. How to fail forward. I had found that magic recipe for success. Failure with a pinch of courage. Now when I look back at that time in my life, it's always in those times of failure. This is where I gain my strength. When I have something great happen in my life today as a result of the changes I've made, I think about those failures. So if you want some advice from an old gangster, here it is. Fail. Fail magnificently, fail miserably, but fail forward. And always fail with courage.
So, I just can't help but to give a little bit more context to today. So, I don't know how many of you all know each other, but there's quite a few of us in here that do know each other. And for myself, I can't tell you how special of an opportunity this is, but just again, what proof it is that things are changing, the way that we do things are changing. Mark was the first person that I got to see do something different. We did time together, a lot of us know each other, and he was only able to do that because he was given the opportunity to. But everything I share, everything that we do, it has the fingerprints of so many people in this room on it. that I'm just so grateful to have met and to have received that support. And so again, I see community here, and I see a very special thing happening that I just have to speak to and I have to share about. And so again, I just appreciate everybody being here, and I wanted to share that with you.
Right on.
This is a poem I wrote called Hope. Seconds, minutes, hours, weeks, months, years, a straitjacket, cinching tighter with each tick. Coiled razor wire constricting, needle teeth stabbing, suffocating, chewing, swallowing, squirming flesh whole. Concrete fists and steel fingers grip heart, lungs, and guts, even sleep. Beating, squeezing, strangling, softening up and making a muck of. 2.5 decades press heavily, bind and tip me back. Pour rotting memories and decaying dreams down my throat. Hope, a thick, soft towel, covers my mouth and slows the flood, ensures a survivable choke. And I wrote this at a time where that was all I could do was write, to put that into something. But just to speak to what I'm sharing, I don't feel that way anymore. And I don't feel that way because I've been supported and I've received the support of people like you and the support of people in our DOC and my friends and family. And so I just want to share that what you do matters and the support that you give matters. So thank you.
From a child, like I can just remember just wanting to know, like stealing sips off of my dad's friend's New Year's and sneaking whenever I could. My first time actually getting drunk, I was 12, and it was everything that I thought it was and more, and completely consumed my life from that point forward. When I was 14, I woke up one morning, I drank a 1.5 of vodka, and was playing with a gun and accidentally shot and killed my brother. I swore to God that I would never drink again. And I meant it with all of my soul and all of my heart. And I was charged with second-degree murder, and my entire family bonded me out of jail so that I could attend my brother's funeral. And 8 months later, I plea bargained to 2 25-year consecutive sentences, aggravated assault and involuntary manslaughter. So 50 years, right? I went to St. Anthony for almost 5 years, and when I was almost 19, was released and moved to Boise. About 1.5 years later, I met some girls that were coming over to my house and thought it would be a good idea to have a 6-pack of beer in case they wanted to drink. And for 5 days, this beer sat in my fridge. I never once had a thought or any kind of intervention whatsoever, like that it was not okay for me to have that. Maybe my PO might show up or my parents might come over or something. None of that happened. That Friday night they came over, I drank a beer, they drank a beer, they left, I went to bed. I woke up the next morning, I opened my fridge and it was like this bomb going off inside, right? My heart dropped out through my chest and into my feet. And for about 10 minutes I was hopeless, helpless, and completely just shocked. I spent a week in jail and I was released, and I couldn't stop. 3 weeks after I drank that beer, I've been up for 5 days on cocaine and methamphetamines. Got arrested for a DUI. I spent a week in jail. And I was in and out of treatment, in and out of prisons for the next few years. And I was locked up, I was on the farm, and they had AA meetings on Thursday nights. And they were an hour long, so I didn't go. But I thought, well, maybe they're bringing tobacco in through these meetings, and so I should probably go check it out. So I go to this meeting, and this guy opens the book, and I had this thought that if I didn't do something different and ask somebody for help, I was never going to make it. I had 2 kids at that time, and all I ever wanted to do was be a good dad, and you can't be a good dad from prison, right? Like you can talk to your kids and try to give them advice, but it's just impossible. I got out on October 10th, 2006, and I asked the guy to help me out, and then I started helping other people. And I've pretty much devoted my life to speaking in schools, I speak in prisons, I speak in treatment centers, and when I speak at the prisons, I always leave time for questions at the end, right? No matter where I'm at. And some of the questions are, do you know this guy? Hey, do you know this guy? Do you know this guy, right? And there's actually 2 people in this room today that I get asked about a lot, okay? And, when you hear a name over and over and over, it's impactful. And neither one of these guys I had met while I was incarcerated, but I knew a little bit about their journey. And the reason why these people were asking about these guys was because they were doing inside what I was doing out here, right? So 2 months ago, I was asked a question. I was asked, hey, can you come out to the farm and speak? And I was like, well, yes. And I was asked by the deputy warden, and she sent me a message and said, there's a guy in here, he's been incarcerated since he was 15 years old, and he has a really impactful story, and he's amazing, right? And I knew right away what that guy's name was, right? I knew right away. I'd never met him, but I knew who he was. And little under 2 weeks ago, I went out to the farm, and I met Shanahan for the first time. And that night I Googled his story because I had never actually got to hear his story, and I was speaking my story. So I read his story, and in the 5th, 6th paragraph in this article that I found in the Spokesman Review, it referenced my story within that story. And it just really humbled me, right? 2 days later, I'm speaking at the Convicted Conference on June 4th at 10 Mile Christian Church. Go check that out. Plug. 2 days later, I get interviewed, and they're like, hey, go to the 10 Mile Christian Church. We're going to interview for this Convicted Conference. I got to meet Shanahan for the second time, right? And then I seen something else. He was born on January 18th of 1980. I was born on January 22nd of 1980. So we're 4 days apart, right? Now, prison time looks really good. And then my original idea for this, Chris wasn't supposed to be here, right? We were just gonna have a picture, and I was gonna kind of tell the story and just explain how, we're all given opportunities, and it doesn't matter our situation, our struggles, where we're at, we can make the best of those opportunities and live in a good way as long as we make positive choices, right? I sometimes forget that I've been given this gift of freedom, and it's a powerful and important gift, and I have to use that to the best of my ability and in the best ways that I can. So I just want to thank you guys all for being here and allowing us to speak to you, and we are going to open up for questions. So if anybody has any questions, raise your hands. Thank you.